Hey everyone, today we're going to be setting up feature flags with React hooks. So what you're going to need is the Split React SDK, the React Hooks API, and a Split repo that we're going to be using for this example. So I'm going to link all of these in the description below, so be sure to follow along. So what we're going to create today is a basic to-do list app with React, and we're going to optimize it with hooks. And the reason we're going to do this is because we want to set up feature flags and use this app to perform a controlled rollout. And a controlled rollout or percentage rollout, it's also sometimes called a canary release. It's when you roll out a feature to only a subset of users before you roll it out to your entire population. And this provides risk mitigation in case something goes wrong. So in a typical React application, data is passed top-down from parent to child with props, but this can become unorganized and overwhelming for certain types of props that are required by many components. So there's this thing called context, and context allows components to access shared functionality without having to explicitly and manually pass down props through every level of the component hierarchy. So it's definitely better to avoid passing down props from parent components if you can avoid it, because if you have a large complex application with a really deep component hierarchy, you'll have to pass down props through many layers of components that don't necessarily care about the props themselves. And this is something that's called prop drilling. So this is why the idea of context is really important here, because what context does is it creates a wrapper around your application that contains the shared functionality that lower level components may want access to. So any component that cares about this context can access it via the UseContext hook. So this is just kind of a shortcut that lets the component reach back up to get what it needs to when it needs it. It's a manageable way for things at the bottom of the hierarchy to know about things at the top. So we're going to use this context facility to provide shared access to our feature flagging implementation. I wrote a blog post a few months ago about how to set up feature flags, and it wasn't using hooks. And in that post, I wrapped my top level to-do list component using with Split Factory, and that set up Split Context in the top of our component hierarchy, and then that was available to any nested component that needed to know about the feature flags. So I'm going to use the same setup here in the hook-based implementation, but instead of having to use an extra high order component every time I want to access this context, I'm just going to use the UseContext hook. So this is the functional way of making the connection back to the top of the application where you're managing context. And this is what it looks like. In this code, you need to go back up and reach for the shared context called Split Context. And when you call with Split Factory, it's wrapping everything with that Split Context provider. So that's all at the top of the hierarchy. And then in your lower level component, you want to use that thing, so you call UseContext. You want to access Split Context specifically, and that's going to give you access to the Split SDK. And this is going to give you all the feature flag information that your lower level component needs regarding the state of the treatment. So if it's on, you allow delete, and if it's off, then you don't allow delete. So this line, it takes care of all the feature flag plumbing. So all you need to do is call the function. So then whenever you render the to-do items component, you're going to use the use treatment hook to pull the feature flag information inside of the component and then allow the user to delete it if it's equal to on. And then the parent component doesn't have to pass anything down anymore. It just uses the hook to magically know the state of the flag. So with this approach, we have not only less code, but just cleaner code, and it lets us use functions like UseContext to get information only when you need it, and it avoids prop drilling, which means having to pass down props down through every layer. And using hooks rather than the standard class-based components is just less boilerplate, it's easy to test, and you don't need to always think of the internal state of the component, which is a plus. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and follow us on Twitter.